Okay, in this video we're going to look at spark plugs. I've laid out a variety of spark plugs here, things that I had hanging around in my garage. Some of them are new, some of them are used. I think there's one of pretty much every major type and one from every major brand here. So, some of the characteristics you need to know about spark plugs are the thread diameter, the reach, the seat type, and the heat range, and we're going to look at that. So, for thread diameter, these here in the middle are the most common. These are 14mm threads. If I was to take a spark plug and try to put it into a 14mm wrench, you'd see the threads fit right in there. Okay, that's not the same as the hex size. Most of these take a 13/16 socket. Some of them are a 5/8. Alright, over to the left, these are 12mm plugs. These are also fairly common. You see them mostly in power equipment and ATVs and motorcycles, and some cars use them. So there's a 12mm wrench, fits right on there. These little plugs over here, these are 10mm plugs. Pretty much you're only going to find those in small engines and power equipment. Maybe a few automotive applications, but I've never come across one. And if we go all the way to the right over here, these are 18mm plugs. These are pretty large. These are very uncommon nowadays. They pretty much only fit older vehicles and older power equipment. You don't see those too often. Alright, so as far as thread diameter goes, if you have the wrong diameter, you're not going to be able to even screw it into the hole correctly. It's either going to fall right into the hole and not catch any threads, or it's not going to start at all. As far as reach, which is the next important thing, you have to make sure you get the right reach plug for the engine. Reach is basically the distance between where it stops and where the thread ends. So where it stops right here on this one has a gasket, this one has a gasket. Notice this one doesn't have a gasket, it's got a tapered seat. So that seat type is important as well, but basically the distance from the seat to the end of the threads is your reach. And you notice there's a pretty good variance in reach. Some are much shorter. Some are really, really short. This one's a tapered seat with a very, very short reach. And some are longer, and some are really long. Alright, the next thing that we need to talk about is something known as the heat range. So like if you look at this plug right here, that number 9 designates the heat range of that plug. And I'll actually use another video to more accurately explain what we mean by heat range. But as that number changes, the temperature that this plug operates at changes. So you can have a hotter plug that operates hotter when it's in the engine, or a colder plug that stays colder when it's in the engine. With different brands, the heat range is sort of encoded in the part number in different ways, so we'll go over that in a minute. And as far as brands, you've probably heard of some of these brands. Okay, ACDelco, those are commonly used in General Motors products. Bosch, usually typically find those on European vehicles. These two are Champion spark plugs, which are common in Chrysler products and also small engines, power equipment, things like that. There's the box for the ACDelco. There's a Champion out of the box. Autolite you may have heard of. Autolite's commonly found in Ford products, Ford's, Lincoln's, Mercury's. Actually, here's the Autolite / Motorcraft box. This plug right here is Motorcraft. Motorcraft are the factory equipment plugs in Ford cars. And if we come over here, these plugs here are NGK spark plugs. NGKs are commonly found in Japanese products, as well as American cars and European cars. NGK is kind of renowned as being one of the best plugs you can buy. A competitor to NGK would be this Denso plug right here. Those are popular in Toyotas. That's another Japanese brand spark plug. Very high quality plug. If you find an older version of a Denso, it would be branded as ND or Nippon Denso. That's their full name. And last but not least, before we wrap up this video, these 3 plugs here are all basically interchangeable, but notice they all have different part numbers. If you pause this video and write these down, you can actually go to the NGK website and look up this fancy little chart that shows you what each character in that part number means. So you can actually decode them. It's one thing I like about NGK plugs. So the B tells you something, the 8 tells you something else, the E tells you something, and the S tells you something. So you can find out what's different between a B8ES, a B9ES, and a BR9ES. Or, if we look at these that I didn't take out of the box, a BR8EG, a BR9EG, and a BR10 EG, and that'll actually be part of one of your assignments.